Hi everybody, what's up and welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited because this is officially the first movie review that I'm recording in the year 2022, and I'm excited because today we're talking about a really great surprise of a movie that I didn't really know much about until I watched it, and it's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And this movie is written and directed by Steven Spielberg. Before we get into my thoughts on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, let me know what you guys think about this movie down below if you've seen it. But without further ado, let's talk about what Close Encounters of the Third Kind is about. Roy Neary, an Indiana electric lineman, finds his quiet and ordinary daily life turned upside down after a close encounter with a UFO, spurring him into an obsessed cross-country quest for answers as a momentous event approaches. So like I said, I didn't know much about this movie until I saw it. In fact, I didn't even know what this movie was about. I obviously knew it had to do something with aliens, so it sparked my interest, but this is probably one that I genuinely wouldn't have seen if I wasn't doing a Steven Spielberg binge. If you haven't seen this movie, go watch it right now because I just think it's very underrated, and it's one that I think a lot of people might enjoy, especially if you are a fan of sci-fi, because I think the take that this movie has is really interesting compared to other sci-fi movies. But this movie is available to stream on Showtime, that's where I saw it, and if you guys have Showtime, then you should definitely check it out. My favorite thing about this movie is the approach that it takes with an alien movie. I think when you have a sci-fi movie, you could have two different takes. You can more go into like the actual scientific side of things where you explore the aliens and these creatures, or you can take it in the direction that this movie went, where it was literally just an ordinary guy who just happened to stumble upon this. And in my opinion, that is my favorite take that a sci-fi movie can take, exploring just the human reaction to things and how a sighting like this could affect people in ways that you might not even think of. And I think this movie explores this beautifully with our two main characters. Roy is definitely the main character of this movie, but Jillian, who's played by Melinda Dillon, she's also really important to the story because her and Roy kind of go back and forth and are kind of helping each other figure out what's happening. And although they have very different approaches and very different scenarios with what's happening, it's really interesting seeing how their characters interact, and I think they were written beautifully. And a really important part of this movie is Roy's family, and I think it plays a lot into how this UFO sighting affects humans, because in this movie we kind of see how this UFO almost sparks something that was missing inside of Roy. The way the family is portrayed throughout the entire movie is really interesting because I think the way it's shot, every single time we get a scene in the house, it's very clustered, there's a lot of stuff going on. I think the set design was really cool in showing us that. It's almost like the family is suffocating Roy, or it's just suffocating in general, because we also see his wife, the mother of these kids, also really stressed out in many situations, and there's barely a moment in this movie where we see this family almost be relaxed. And I think it's really interesting that Steven Spielberg wrote this. And online, when I was researching, like what his inspirations were for this movie, a lot of articles stated that this was a very personal movie to him. And I think it's interesting because when he did write this, he wasn't a father yet, and I don't even think he was married yet. So it's almost like if he's projecting what his fears are, because a lot of the times Roy's character is also feeling a lot of fear and anxiety with being a father and the responsibility that takes. This movie cleverly explores how one's obsession can also be a detriment to a family, because in this movie, Roy, he finds this thing and he just completely forgets about everything else and almost just pays attention to this UFO, because it's like what I said, it sparked something in him that was missing. And I think this movie has a constant theme of not fearing the unknown but appreciating it. I think the movie has a really great balance of having that but also showing just a lot of optimism. When I ended this movie, it felt like I was giving a really big hug. That's something I didn't expect, because honestly throughout the entire movie I had so many questions and a lot of them weren't answered. I'd say most of them were not answered. Like, this movie is very vague, and the ending of this movie is really different than a lot of Steven Spielberg endings that I've seen, because it's so ambiguous and it almost leaves you like, okay, well, what's next? But I think the movie kind of prepared us for that, because the whole time with these characters, we get this sense of just optimism and that the future will be okay, like it will all be okay, even though we don't really know what's gonna happen. The optimism is played really nicely because the first scene of this movie is really interesting, because it's these characters that don't understand each other because of the English and Spanish language barriers. And then one of the other characters that is really important in this movie is a French scientist, and I want to say that it's really cool that he's played by François Truffaut. He was a really important filmmaker during the French New Wave, and it was really cool just seeing him in this movie. I really liked his performance. And language is something that just divides all of us because we can't understand each other, and I think it's really interesting that when you start exploring the UFOs in this movie, it almost just brings the entire world together, because they have a universal language, which is like through music, sign language, and things like that. And those little certain moments in this movie are what bring this optimism and this hope that this sighting, these creatures that are gonna come down, are going to help humanity, and I really loved exploring that. The cinematography here is excellent, and as a huge sci-fi fan, I love seeing these spaceships and I love seeing the galaxy. The last like 30 minutes are some of the most beautiful scenes that I've seen in movies ever, honestly, and I'm really surprised that it's not talked about enough because I love the way the movie ends. It's so beautiful. Genuinely, the characters in this movie are in awe, and so was I. I was just looking at this and I'm like, oh my god, this would look great, I think, on like IMAX and a big screen. I hope they one day do some remastered version or they put it back in theaters because I would so be there. I'd book my ticket right away because it's just so beautiful to look at, and I was watching it from my TV at home, so I can't even imagine big on the screen. And I always like to talk about my pros and my negatives, and I've definitely given a lot of pros with this movie, but if I were to just give a little negative, I think the movie is a tad bit too long. I felt it a little bit towards the middle, but towards the end it picked up again. I just think this is a very character-driven sci-fi movie, especially with Roy as our main character, and I hope this review makes you guys want to watch this movie because I think it's very underappreciated, at least in my eyes, because I have not heard much talk about this movie. It still looks so visually stunning, and it's just one of the best sci-fi looking movies and one of the best written sci-fi movies I've ever seen, honestly. And if you have not seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I really do recommend it. I think this is going to be one of my go-to movie nows, and when I ever just want to smile, I'm going to put this movie on because it just has such a beautiful outlook on everything, and I love the way the movie ends, and even though it's ambiguous and doesn't really give us answers, it's just interesting. It keeps my brain going in a positive way, and I love it for that. If you haven't already, make sure to comment down below your thoughts on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I hope if you haven't seen it, this convinced you to go check it out because, again, I'm gonna keep saying it, I think everybody should watch this movie. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you're not subscribed to my channel but you like movie reviews, then make sure to subscribe because I have movie reviews coming from old and new releases and other fun videos all about movies coming out. And guys, Scream is coming out this week. By the time this video is up, Scream is coming out, and if you all know me, you know I'm a huge Scream fan, so make sure to subscribe, turn on the post notification so you guys don't miss when my Scream review comes out this week. But yeah, expect more Steven Spielberg reviews and other types of reviews from new releases and all of that, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys!